Hey guys, yeah, this is a new segment that we're gonna have on the channel. Again, we're gonna be going over Super Rugby Pacific players throughout every position. And again, we're starting off with the big one, which is wingers, and we'll be giving you guys our top five wingers going up for Super Rugby Pacific off this season. So again, just remember this is going off this season alone, and we're only choosing wingers. So not like players that are like fullbacks that go into winger, just wingers as they're known to be. And we're going off this current season. So that's really the two stipulations there. And again, obviously, we're not choosing any injured players, if there are any. But yeah, again, joining us, of course, will be the Kiwi lads. He'll be joining us for all of these kind of segments in terms of going over these players. And it's a tough one because, as the season goes along, our minds obviously change in terms of, I guess, the players and where they kind of rank in terms of this top five. But yeah, I mean, let's just get straight into this because this is going to be awesome. But actually, before we do, make sure, obviously, guys, to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and also let us know in the comments what you guys think about our kind of top five, if you guys agree or disagree. But also let us know in the comments your top five, because that's the most important thing. We want to see your top five in terms of what you believe are the top five winners in Super Pacific for this season alone. But yeah, again, going off straight to you, man. What is your fifth placed winner in terms of winners in Super Rugby Pacific?
Well, I think your big mistake, Tim, was picking one of the most indecisive people to do a top five list with. As you know, I am about as terrible at making decisions as they come. For number five, I've had about 3 changes since you started your intro. I'll just tell you some of my thinking. I'm picking a Hurricanes winger as number 5.
Okay.
I wasn't sure whether to go with Josh Morby or whether to go with Kenny Naholo. Now, originally I had Morby, but now thinking about what happened in that game up against the Blues, I'm starting to sway more in favour of Kenny Naholo because just that impact that man's able to have is immense. So even though Morby scored 3 tries, I'm going to go with Kenny Naholo as my number 5 in Super Rugby Pacific.
Good pick. Good pick. I like it a lot, by the way, because he is definitely someone that I've thought of throughout this whole kind of top 5 wingers, but I actually didn't go with him, which is a big call. But it's like the reasoning where, like, do you go with someone going off of stats in terms of this guy scored like more tries than the other, or do you have the guy who just has made the impact, you can really say, and that's kind of what obviously Naholo did last week. So I understand your thinking with that one. So I like that fifth pick. For me, however, I've actually gone with a Highlanders player in this position, and I'm going with Tamosi Tabata Nawai. And this is I think he's one of those players where there was a lot of interest in, because he was obviously making his this is his debut season for the Highlanders, but I think so far he's looked pretty good for them, and he's really just made an impact straight away. I think he's had like at least 2 tries, if I'm not mistaken, for the Highlanders so far. So yeah, he's definitely made an impact for them. Yeah, so really with Tomosi there, I mean, he just has a really good kind of back three with him, and I just think it kind of complements him well in a way, because he has Nemkins as that 15 option and Nareki as the 11. So it's kind of a really good kind of backline to be a part of, and I think that he kind of obviously that's what allows him kind of like to be awesome, really, in a way. So yeah, he's my number 5th pick. In terms of number 4, this may be a bit of a controversial one, but I've gone with Sever Reese as my number 4 here. And again, I know the Crusaders haven't had the best of seasons, but again, this is one where you look at the stats. He scored 4 tries, and he's been very, I guess, consistent in that way, because he's come back from an injury, which he didn't play most of the Super Rugby season last year, and he hasn't really been able to kind of do as much recently. So it's been good to see him kind of come back into the Super Rugby essence, and just kind of prove once again why he is still considered a world-class winger, and he's been producing for them. So I've gone with him as number 4 option there. But I understand, obviously, with the Crusaders not doing as well, it's a controversial pick. But yeah, Sever Reese, he's a very consistent player, and I think that's what everyone can agree on. So that's the reason why I've gone with him number 4. But
extremely controversial, Tim. Yeah, number 4 pick. For myself, number 4, Sever Reese. He scored 4 tries throughout the Super Rugby Pacific season. He's also beaten 13 defenders, and he's also had a few offloads along the way. So with the Crusaders' struggling team, he's still been a little bit of a shining light in there, and I think he's going to continue to do so throughout the season as they start to find their combinations and what works. Something that he does very well, similar to Timothy Nawai, is that work in the breakdown. Those guys get right in there, they get those turnovers. Tawatawa Nawai last week was impeccable up against the Waratahs, although to be fair, I don't know when this is coming out, so maybe he was terrible last week that we've just had, but for now anyway, he's in some very good form. Sevu Reece, see what he can do by the end of the Super Rugby Pacific season. But moving on now to number 3, and this is where the decisions start to get a lot more tricky and I start to get a lot more indecisive. Number 3, I have gone with Mark Talia, your Blues boy.
Ooh, okay.
Now, maybe controversial, maybe also some would say not high enough in the overall rankings, but he scored 2 tries, 48 carries throughout the season, also 17 defenders beaten, over 240 metres carried, a lot of offloading along the way as well. But the reason that I've only got him at 3 is he's a little bit of a 50-50 at the moment. He either has a great game or we see a game where he just doesn't look like he quite is firing. Now, he's got a very good ability of scoring tries even when he's out of form. We saw that in the game up against the Hurricanes. When he got that interception try, counts to a try to his name, but overall for that game, I think that his handling wasn't quite what it has been in the past. And out of most of these defenders that I've picked, I still think that his defense might be classed as one of the weaker. But I've still got him at number 3, and I feel like that's a very good spot for him.
Yeah, no, I by the way, I actually don't disagree with you, by the way, because we'll get into it later, but he's maybe a conversation. He's one player I'm definitely going to talk about later on when it comes towards the number 1 spot for a reason. But I know from my number 3, I've actually gone with a Fijian Duran player here, and I think he's been very impressive in terms of 11 spots. And I've gone with Ratuwala Manda there. He's again done very good for so far for them. He's gained. I mean, he's just the amount of meters that guy has carried. I mean, this year it's incredible. He continues running, and no one can kind of stop him in a way. But I think he has 2 tries to his name himself, if I'm not mistaken, and he has just been great to see. And again, we've obviously discussed him in the past as well in terms of how he maybe how he may kind of look in terms of a Fiji kind of, I guess, back free. And again, I think he would slot into that back free with ease, I think, for what we've seen so far throughout the season. So, yeah, he's a player I'm going to keep an eye off, obviously, for the rest of the year. But so far, he's been really impressive to me. And again, he looked really good against the Crusaders in that game. So I think you got to give him his props. And I think he's definitely a top 5 winger for me within Super Pacific. But yeah, again, this is where it gets down to the nitty gritty because we're going down towards the top 2 here. And I've actually gone with Corey Toole as my number 2 here. And again, you can go with, there's a lot of options here actually in terms of you can go for, but I've actually gone with Corey Toole as my number 2 here. Again, he scored 4 tries, a double in both first his 2 games. So it's very easy to talk about him because he's just been very clinical from that aspect, from a stats position. But I also just think he's been a very important player for the Brumbies because I think he's just one player which they love to use their wingers, and that's something which we've seen in the past. Like even when they had like Tom Banks back in the day, he's always been as a 15 spot, but he's always had good cover in terms of his wingers, like with Murray Head as the 14, or if it's Tom Wright, or obviously now it's been Corey Toole has been kind of the winger that stood out for them. So he's kind of the one I've looked out so far in terms of the Brumbies, and he's really been a shining light for them, I'd say, so far this season. So for that alone, I have gone with him as my number 2 in terms of the second best winger in Super Pacific so far. So yeah, kind of what's your thoughts on that? Do you agree, or is there someone else you have in that 2nd spot?
I'm really bad at listing. Number 2. See, I've already changed my mind a little bit as well, just in the last 5 minutes, in terms of whereabouts I am ranking everyone. But number 2, I do actually have Corey Toole. Same as yourself. He is there for me. He scored those tries like you mentioned. I think that he's been a really good player for a struggling Brumbies team at times. But then some of the individual brilliance that we've seen from him throughout the season has really shown what he can do. Love watching him when he was playing in the 7 circuit for the Aussies, and you see some of those skills coming out every once in a while when he is running at the line. That little chip and chase try, I think, was definitely one of the best that we have seen in Super Rugby Pacific so far this year for individual tries being scored. 15 defenders beaten, 239 metres carried, I believe it is. So he's getting work done, and I think that that's very important, and he's going to be one of the keys for the Brumbies as they make their way forward throughout the season. Because if he's firing, maybe a few of those other guys in the back line get a bit of inspiration and they start firing too. But I think that he's definitely a certainty in the starting lineup for the Brumbies. And I think he's almost a certainty to get the chance for the Aussies when the Wallabies season comes around.
Yeah, it's... I like the pick. I like the pick. Again, we've both gone in second, so it makes sense.
I'd like to hope you like the pick, seeing
yeah,
as you
exactly. But this is it. This is the one. Who have you gone as your number one winger so far from Super Rugby Pacific this year?
Well, some will say there's bias involved, Tim, but
okay.
I will say that there isn't. It's just in terms of my personal opinion, this guy, he's been on a team that have struggled at times. He's also been one of the keys when they have been struggling. He's had a yellow card to then come back out onto the field and score a try. That almost got his team the win. Now, unfortunately, they missed out in that game, but they were showing a lot of heart and a lot of Fijian flair throughout that contest. Number one for me, Celestino Ravatamunda. I just feel like on a team that has had so many changes compared to last year, he has just stepped up drastically for this Fijian Drua team. He's had the 6 clean breaks. He's beaten 18 defenders throughout the matches. Like I mentioned, he got a yellow card and he went, my bad, I'll come back on and I'll score a try straight away to try and change the game. Up against the Crusaders, I thought that he was very impressive as well. And he just seems like the type of player that when Fiji are struggling, he's the guy to look to and say, right, you need to do something for us here. And then he'll break through 4 tackles and create that try-scoring opportunity. So for that reason, I feel like he's got to be my number one pick. Yeah. Yes, I do enjoy watching the Fijian Drua play. I feel like everyone does. But just the fact that he's had the most running meters out of the guys that I have got as an option, as well as the most defenders beaten. Yeah. Yes, he hasn't scored the most tries, but I feel like if you look at assists, he's probably not too far off there in terms of that last pass or his run that has created that chance. So yeah, Celestino Ravatamunda, going with him.
Yeah, no, I like the pick. I like the pick a lot. That's why I also included him in this top 5, because I think he deserves a mention, and I think I'm not going to argue against that. I think that's a good pick to pick a number one. Again, this is where it gets a bit controversial because I did mention his name beforehand, but Martelea, he's a player which I definitely considered in this number one position, but I've actually not included him in this top 5. I just don't think...
If you've considered him for number one, surely he gets a spot outside of the...
That's the thing, is that I'm looking at the other list of players, and I think they've all outperformed him this year. In terms of the 3 games we've seen so far, I'm a Blues fan, guys, so I'm being just very honest in a way. When I look at, when I reflect on on him alone and what he's done in previous years, he hasn't, again, this is obviously a small kind of, a sample we're getting of, because it's only been 3 games so far in Super B. We're looking at winners. And again, we may look back at this, obviously, later down the line. But I know that, in terms of this for now, I think Martelea isn't in that top 5. And yes, it's a tough pick because, he's an awesome player. He's literally, he just glides past players of ease. But I think the number one player for me, and a player who's really stood out for me so far this year, and it's always a player that goes under the radar in terms of All Black selection, but I think he should be more in the conversation. But it's Ena Nana Satiro. I think he's a player who's really done well for me, I think, so far this year. Again, he was probably the best winger, I think, so in that opening round. I mean, he was sensational, I believe, against the Crusaders. I believe he got man of the match, if I'm not mistaken. He got, I think, 2 tries against them, if I'm not mistaken, or at least 1. I mean, there was one where he kind of just got the ball on the left side, and he just literally just one sidestep killed 3 players, and he just kind of ran it into the post. So his sidestep is definitely the best of the game by a mile. I haven't seen anyone use more sidesteps than him in rugby for a long time in Super Pacific. But yeah, he's just a great player to have, and he's becoming more consistent, and that's something which, again, when you're going for the potential selection of an All Blacks kind of position, that's what you need. Consistency is the most crucial thing, really, when it comes down towards that, and he's now starting to build upon that so far, for what we've seen so far this season. And again, the Chiefs have had a good year. I mean, they beat the Crusaders, which was a big win for them. Again, they had a pretty impressive win against the Brumbies, just really demolishing them in that one, because, again, I think we both mentioned in that would be a lot closer game to what we thought it would be, but they just blew past them. But of course, in that last game against the Reds really just stood against them, and kind of the Chiefs now have to look back at that and be like, okay, there's a lot that we have to fix. But if you look at that game overall, I thought Nana was pretty good in that one. Again, they weren't able to use their wingers as much in that one. So I understand that all the games, it's probably the one you can't really look at him as doing as well. But if you go off the first 2, he was amazing. So I just think he's the player that's really stood out for me so far this year. And yeah, a player to keep in mind, I guess, going for the future in terms of All Black selection. But yeah, that is kind of it there, guys. In terms of our top 5, in terms of Super Pacific Wingers. Again, you have to remember we're only going off current, so just keep that in mind. This is not like just we're choosing the best wingers in Super, because again, that could be another list, and I would just potentially just put Marcellay as number 1 because I would say he's the best winger in terms of Super Pacific. But again, we're going off current in terms of their form, so just keep that in mind. But yeah, again, obviously, just thank you for coming along, Kiwi lads. Again, I'll leave a link obviously in the description, guys. But yeah, make sure obviously, guys, to like the video, subscribe to our channel. Let us know in the comments what you guys believe is your top 5. I want to see your guys' top 5. So let me know in the comments. Obviously react towards them as well. But yeah, besides that, guys, see you guys next time.